Mare Cognitum by Norsepony, Part 2. Ideally, the elder preferred to have some warning for her sister's plans, and with too many prior examples, that would have meant gaining any warning at all. Luna liked to play things close to the regalia, and kept much of it tucked under that starum plate. She didn't quite believe that it was easier to gain forgiveness than ask permission. After all, as a full equal in the diarchy, permission usually wasn't being sought. But she did feel that the ideal time to explain whatever had just happened was in the aftermath. And besides, informing others about what she was up to might make them feel as if there was a chance to correct her. So Luna didn't tell Celestia anything. But this time it was because doing so would have spoiled the surprise. The lesson, the gift. They managed to work out the budget. It took 3 additional cycles, every one of which inflicted its share of little wounds to lick clean. There were a number of compromises, accompanied by multiple small skirmishes. Celestia wound up taking the majority of those victories, and it would take her weeks before she realized that some of them had arisen because her opponent had been somewhat distracted. And afterwards, the battle died down again, but it never completely went away. It arguably couldn't, because they were sisters. They loved each other, fiercely protected the only remaining fellow survivor. And they argued, fought now and again. Generals in the war of perspective, fighting over access to what often felt like an imaginary piece of common ground. The cycle-to-cycle operations of governing a nation took over. There would be a little crisis, a minor border tiff, or a law to sign. The bearers were dispatched twice during Luna's preparation, once for an afternoon, with the second time requiring 5 days. The first mission, which had been intended as a diplomatic meet and greet, required the majority of the cleanup. Celestia didn't know what her sibling was up to. She didn't realize that Luna was planning anything at all, but she inadvertently spotted the outskirts of the plan, and did so without recognizing what she was seeing. Luna was traveling, or rather, she was meeting with escort-capable unicorns, those few who could both teleport and take others with them on the journey. This had actually been, irregularly, going on for some time, because there were far more cities, towns, and settled zones in the nation than had existed prior to Abiance. Being escorted to the new allowed Luna to memorize her own future arrival points. And it was good for Luna to go out into the world again, to meet ponies and give them a chance to learn who she truly was. It had been nearly 1,300 years. Celestia was still trying to work that last part out. So Luna traveled, taken to another part of the realm in a flash of light, always returning well before moon lowering. That was natural, and if she was doing somewhat more of that, then that was good. Also, time away from the palace represented a chance for a cooling-off period. Obviously easier for Luna. There was a single slip, and the younger wasn't the one who made it. Paperwork was passed off to the wrong department, effectively crossing the lunar-solar line. Some pony decided Celestia needed to review it, and the elder barely glanced at the unusual material purchase before deciding that Luna was just refurbishing something. This turned out to be correct. She sent the invoice back to the proper office, and gave it no more thought than that was necessary for scrawling her signature. Almost none. Her official autograph was a series of elaborate loops. The palace signature was a uniquely illegible scrawl. It saved time. Those were nearly all the clues she received, and she would eventually tell herself that it never could have been enough to assemble a solution. An increased amount of travel, one wandering invoice, and Luna tended to return from her journeys somewhat cleaner than she had been at departure. Nothing to work with there. Of course, if she'd been paying real attention, she might have registered that a silver-clad hoof had flipped a few calendar pages, designated a date, and was steadily clearing away Celestia's evening schedule. The elder spotted that part on the night before the gift. It had been a busy week. The bearers had almost been dispatched, and several guards were aching in their stead. The sort of period where you didn't dare to look too far ahead, because you had to fix what was currently in front of you, and besides, it was almost courteous to let the more minor problems enjoy their ambush. So Celestia didn't see that her schedule was partially empty until she was almost right on top of it. A small flare of sunlight opened the appointment ledger. She saw the blank space, and her first reaction was relief. It was rare for either sibling to have their full duties end when their shift technically closed. For Luna, this was most true in summer. Having less night to work with meant more to do within limited hours. Celestia faced the same issue in winter, and it was ultimately simpler to just divide up the solar and lunar staffs equally across the clock. But it was somewhat easier for each of the sisters to operate during the right hours. Experiencing too little sun in the coldest season could make Celestia increasingly irritated. She usually didn't want to keep working after the orb was lowered, and the bureaucracy never cared. But there were times when the stars aligned by sheer accident, and did so at a rate of slightly more often than once per 1,000 years. She was looking at a night off. Most of her background thoughts during the next day centered around figuring out just what to do with it. Sneaking out to a cinema usually meant asking the owner to gift her with a screen to herself. She was too distracting for the audience otherwise. She also didn't like the view from the typical princess box, which was far too much off to the side, and to the place herself, front and center meant every pony for several rows behind her was mostly looking at a great expanse of white. And it could also require ditching her guards, because she really didn't need this cinemaphiles among them twitching as they tried to figure out what was and wasn't considered to be a spoiler. In theory, there was the chance to do something with Luna, but miraculously, cleared night hours for the elder weren't going to be echoed in the younger's schedule, not unless those had been emptied on purpose, which would need more notice and so wouldn't happen. Maybe she could just read, something other than a legislative composition, intelligence report, or post-bearer repair expense sheet. There were novels she'd been meaning to catch up on, and since the act of reading for pleasure only seemed to summon an interrupting crisis roughly 30% of the time, she'd even got to finish a few. Then again, when she compared that to the disaster summoning rate of the typical cinema visit, sun was lowered. Her duties were concluded, and at the exact moment Luna intercepted her on the way to Apex Tower, the elder was almost on the verge of a decision. "Time to yourself, sister?" formed an immediate inquiry as Luna nearly matched hoofsteps on Celestia's left. The smaller alicorn needed to move a little faster to keep up, not nearly as much as she once had. It had clearly been a question, and Celestia carefully considered her options as they moved together across the marble. She probably doesn't want my advice on something. They did consult, and fairly frequently, but each had the final word over their own domains. Budgeting, which had to cover everything, formed a common battleground. It still meant that they had to be there for each other, because there had been a very long time when they had not. The odds that Luna was experiencing the sort of crisis which needed assistance were not zero. The chance of her immediately requesting help were somewhat lower. She may just be curious. Celestia couldn't always be sure. Each knew the other better than any other living pony, but not perfectly. Love wasn't understanding, and perspective would always find a way to carve out a dividing chasm. Yes was safe enough, and formed a natural invitation for Luna to follow up. The younger did. "As have I," the sister calmly informed her. "Will you travel with me?" Celestia's casual trot began to slow, and did so at an inverse ratio to the rate at which her thoughts were speeding up. Luna continued to match her, if with somewhat less effort. Rather carefully. "You cleared my schedule." With utter calm, "I requested that a few among your staff shift certain meetings, which took more effort and convincing than I had hoped. They are rather protective, sister. Not that they seem to feel I intended harm, but they do hear the little battles, sometimes from a rather short distance, and when I would not explain my precise reasoning for the request. A smooth, traveling shrug, as mane and tail rearranged their respective constellations. I am simply fortunate as to have been accommodated in secrecy several times over. Will you travel? Why? Was also basic, along with being much shorter than you're up to something. Seriously, is any degree of warning too much to ask for? Because I have something I wish to give you. She paused, and feathers awkwardly rustled. Or rather, I wish to try. I have no way of knowing whether it might succeed. The only mare who can determine success or failure resides within another's skin. A gift, Celestia tried, which requires travel. Luna stopped, and in doing so forced Celestia to match her. The younger stared up at the older, and dark eyes did not beg. Luna seldom begged. Moon wasn't known for doing a lot of pleading, either. But each breath was short. They caught in the throat, and nearly blocked the only word there was. Please? Luna had initiated and directed the teleport, a necessity when the younger was the only one who knew where they were going. It had brought them to the center of an empty gatehouse, one which looked just about like every other gatehouse in the nation, because when a structure had to remain forever empty so it could safely serve as a destination for such journeys, there wasn't a lot of room for decoration. And when they'd step out, there were portions of their nation which Celestia rarely saw. She tried to tour now and again, and make sure that the citizenry knew she was truly there as one of their rulers. They had to see the princesses every now and again, if only for reassurance. Having them see her as a pony was much more difficult. But still, some areas could suffer a degree of neglect, and the regions which saw the least visits tended to be the most self-sufficient. In this case, the area was known to have a significant monster population. It had been that way for a long time, and accordingly, the residents had become rather good at dealing with just about everything themselves. The palace rarely needed to directly intervene, much less assist, and even when Celestia did go on tour, it was generally during the summer. She hadn't seen an eastern Saddlezania winter in decades. It was an exceptionally cold region, and remained so because the Weather Bureau understood that the locals liked it that way. The area had 3 primary exports: young adults who decided that having grown up there meant they could readily take on the rest of the world, sourced monster parts, and relaxation science. Living in the Saddlezania region could be stressful. The natives needed to relax, and they did so with such skill that tourists frequently ventured into that territory in order to try out the spas, because it was a beautiful part of the nation, and they might as well relax among natural majesty. Visitors were advised to either stay on the roads or travel with a guide. The most fortunate result for some of those who didn't was to wind up with a somewhat more urgent need to calm down. A few were placed on treadmills until their legs finally stopped running. Ponies were advised to use guides for safety, but the lone travelers on the white obscured road had each other. A 3/4 moon shone down on bare branches and fresh snow. The shadow-coated white crust was steadily broken by 8 heavy hooves. Luna sank in a fair distance with each step, while Celestia usually wound up with her hooves compacting semicircles of ice onto the actual road. And it was cold, truly cold, to the point where a normal pony's breath would frost in front of their snouts, and then waft back to freeze eyelashes together. But the travelers were the lunar and solar alicorns. One knew the chill of moon, and required an active effort to simply notice when others might shiver. And Celestia, she carried sun's warmth with her, always. There were times when she had to keep most of it inside, and she kept telling herself not to melt the road clear, because the locals liked it this way, and besides, any moisture which remained in the air would be a thin coating of treacherous black road ice by morning. Still, it was tempting. One thought, and the sheer amount of steam would be mostly competing with the other sources. Eastern Saddlezania, frozen winters and rivers which never knew ice. There was volcanic activity in the area, and most of it was buried deep. The surface saw a few rumbles occasionally, and little more than that. Eruptions were both rare and, unless you were right on top of one, harmless. The earth ponies had set up travelways for the lava, and death flowed well away from life. But the heat went deep. Some of the water flowed just close enough to gather a portion, and snow under their hooves, steam rising from the flow of liquid on their right, natural hot springs. Chill and heat, traveling side by side. You are rather quiet, Luna noted. Glanced up, then back. The warm lights of the town were continuing to recede, almost unusually so. Returned her attention to the fainted softer light, about a 20th gallop ahead on the road. I'm trying to figure out what the gift is, Celestia admitted, especially one which would require coming here. Carefully. I thought a spa evening, but there's more than a few in Canterlot, and they're nearly all run by ponies who started here. Somewhat, Luna calmly interrupted, and dark ears briefly dipped. Yes, as the setting, at least. Melted snow was beginning to soak Celestia's pasterns. An irritated thought evaporated and dried. Because we've been stressing each other out, the elder sighed, even with the budget done. The only other survivor took a breath. Nearby evergreen needles seemed to bow inwards. We do not understand each other. Celestia stopped. Snow crunched. A half-tangible tail had a waft of steam pass through. Luna, who had kept moving for an extra moment, got half a body length ahead, paused, then looked back. Or rather, she quietly added, as moon's light reflected from her eyes, that comprehension is less than perfect. We are very different ponies, Tia. Each tells herself that she knows how the other thinks. But there are times when we are wrong. Still. And each carries the other, but we carry the selves we knew at the start. Impressions which have not changed, which cannot change. An older sibling, a younger one, a constant, forever coloring perceptions. And that through our own eyes, because we cannot see through each other's. The words had been calm, perhaps too calm, to the point where something in Celestia was starting to respond with the long-delayed memory of terror. Luna. The left forehoof came up. Wait, Tia, please. Celestia stopped. I still think of you as the Mare who existed before Ambiance, the younger softly managed, and did so as main-captured stars twisted. Sometimes, well before that, because I missed every little alteration which came during the lost time. I missed everything, and the dark head dipped. Being absent to witness those changes is what produces so much of the regret. And yet, she looked up into purple eyes, sighed, and the darker form became perfectly still. If I had been present, one thing might be the same, that I love you, and tell myself that I know you, but I cannot think as you do. Not every time. I can never be you. I cannot see the world through your eyes. Her head went down again, and Celestia stepped forward. That's every pony, Luna. Wondering if any of the sudden desperation had reached her voice. Every pony in the world. We're all trapped in our own heads. Love and friendship is how we get closer to some degree of escape. Empathy, the younger half corrected, still gazing at the snow. Yes, but tonight I wish to try and offer a gift. That of going further, and I do not know if it can work. Private stars were beginning to dim. If this will let you know something more of me, but likely for an instant at best. Only you can tell me if it went that far, Tia. Only you. The solar alicorn took a slow breath. The realm's largest rib cage shifted. Trust her. She had to remember that she trusted Luna, because it was just Luna now. The other thing was dead. Is it a spell? Something experimental? Trust? Which could have all kinds of problems. Tell me it isn't a body swap. I need to hear these words. The younger looked up, blinked. No, the dark features voiced, and did so with a faint smile. And yes. and she resumed her trot through the snow. After a moment, Celestia hurried to catch up. "It's not a body swap, is it?" "I am already attempting to achieve the near impossible," was rather dry. "That would be going too far. And when it comes to any sort of exchange, I find Star Swirl's previous disaster to be sufficient." "It is a spa," Celestia immediately decided. "A mineral bath," Luna corrected. The building seemed to exist as an enclosed intersection. The central portion had been created by taking several thick, evenly spaced tree trunks, then using them as the bracing points for a roof and multiple huge panes of glass. There had been earth ponies involved in the construction, and so all the trees were still alive. That section rose to 4 times Celestia's height, and contained a wide but shallow indoor pool. She could clearly see the full extent of it through the glass, and that one light left on. It could easily host at least 70 ponies, and it would take an exceptionally short adult to have the water lap against their jaw. There were padded, water-absorbent benches around the pool area. A few empty refreshment mugs had been left out for the night, but the juice bar had been fully shut down. The sign above the descending ramp to the left said it went to a sauna, and that was a high-risk enterprise for froth-producing ponies. The right went to a drying room and cool-down track. Look all the way through the glass towards the back, and it was possible to see a half-covered section of steaming river. It flowed through that portion of the building, and a rotating gate let ponies reach the outdoor portions. There was also a cold dip pool, currently unnecessary. Glass and wood in the center. For Eastern Saddle Zania, both would have been reinforced into something closer to steel. But at the sides, smaller enclosures with no glass at all and closed doors, occluded from sight. The sign near the right one claimed a whirlpool bath, whatever that was. The left simply said, "Closed for renovations. Current wait 1 day." And it said that because the locals felt that if you spoke that way, then any spelling had to naturally follow. "I don't see any pony inside," Celestia noted. "There are none," Luna calmly told her. "Tonight we are their only clients." Her horn ignited, and a dark corona flowed forward to interact with the locks. "So you're going to teach me about enjoying baths?" Celestia tried her best guess. "Here, and then I might understand you more?" "No." The door clicked, glowed, and swung open. Luna trotted forward. "No," Celestia repeated, carefully following. Luna glanced back over her tail, and something in the elder waited for withering words. "Your memories go somewhat deeper than mine," the younger said, then shrugged. 2 years older, after all, but water was not to be trusted because, in our youth, what was? Air turning solid when his attention focused, and who knew what water might become, or what already lurked within it? She went inside, tail flicking meteors against the doorframe. After a moment, Celestia joined her. "There were attacks from the lake," Celestia admitted, "and the stream. You remember a few." "And I also remember that they can no longer occur," Luna placidly replied. "At least, not in the same ways. But it is more than that." She began to trot around the rim of the pool, towards the "Renovations" sign. "I can but guess, sister, but I feel that something in you sees water as fragile. After all, it requires but the lightest touch of your fire to disperse." Another glance back, and after a moment the elder nodded. "For me," Luna continued, "it is rather more real." Paused. "And should my emotions join with my magic, more solid. So for tonight, Tia, let the water simply be. Let it be until it barely seems to exist at all." Purple eyes blinked. "Luna—" "Final preparations," the younger said. "I must arrange the area, as far as I can. Wait here." The next door opened, and did so at the same moment when Luna's horn flared with darkness, an umbra which, in all the world, only she could see within. Celestia could combat it, of course, invoke enough of the sun's light to dispel, but trust her. The shadows coated the doorway, concealed what was beyond. Luna trotted inside. It took about 5 minutes. Celestia only started to pace during the last 2, and then Luna softly called out, "Enter." Celestia looked at the little wall of darkness over the entrance, forced her legs to move, stepped through. Another pool, smaller this time, maybe 15 ponies for comfortable capacity, maybe, but it's also deeper. Slight chill in the room. That's coming off the water, and the water is dark. The water is glowing with darkness. The pool was inlaid with a closely spaced mosaic of dark blue and black tiles, something which finally explained that one stray invoice. The liquid itself seemed to be an exceptionally dark shade, as if it had been taken from the Crucian grotto. But that was clearly impossible. Any water brought out of the deep place reverted to normal within 5 minutes. By coincidence, this was some safety margin for remaining within the cave and recognizing its beauty. After that, the viewing pony would never be able to appreciate anything again. Celestia could barely see the bottom of the pool, and what she could spot told her that for a normal pony, it was deep. The facility seemed to be built around letting its clients stand safely within water, because ponies made for poor swimmers. With this hollow, I could probably stand in there, but the water would have been just short of her chin, back fully covered, and the wings. Are those little holes at the bottom? They don't seem to be draining. That might have been an optical illusion, something produced by the lights, because there were 6 glowing devices spaced around the underwater perimeter of the oval. Their lumens were some part of what gave the water that deep shade, and just about all of what allowed her to see the room at all. There was a touch of oddly separate white around the rim of each, just enough to tell that it was there, but the rest was a different hue, and that was what reached the surface, produced the faint glow. Her first impression had been that the water was shining with darkness. It would have perhaps been more fair to say that the water was glowing with a particularly deep blue, just a few thin shades of chroma away from black. Celestia brought her gaze up, looked around the room. There seemed to be a theme. This is a lot of tile. I wished for the ambiance to be proper. That black pattern on the back wall, with the thin white, proudly, meteors streaking by. Celestia looked up, and the big round objects overhead, I can't quite make those out. Very slightly abashed. They started as asteroids, but then they turned out rounder than I intended, with flatter bottoms. Oh, I was considering whether to paint them deep green. Oh, lily pads. Oh. Of the two, Luna was the artist. Celestia could, with some effort, usually manage to appreciate art. And the owners just let you do all this? Calmly, I made a reasonable request, because it can't possibly be abuse of authority if you think they might muster the strength to say no. Trust her. They also gain the results, Luna added, which may assist their income. Tia. She hesitated, and the elder listened, waited. This is where I require your assistance. What do I need to do? Heat the water, the younger replied, more finely than the embedded wonders would allow, but simply to the point where it exactly matches your body temperature, no more, and then maintain that. She didn't understand the need, but that was hardly a prerequisite for love. Something invisible rose from white fur. The pool warmed. Luna nodded, began to lower a dark body onto tile. Celestia started to match the drop. Immerse yourself, Luna said, slowly and fully, to the deepest part. You have enough room to move. The elder looked down at the younger, with Luna resting now on the rim, farther down. White wings twitched. Luna, I see your feathers shifting, sister. It was almost a smile. Your Pegasus aspect dislikes this, for fully soaked wings may negate flight. Silence it for a time. I require you to do this, no others. The left foreleg gestured. There is a ramp with hoof divots. Use it, carefully, and once you are within, move as you wish, or remain still, but do not emerge. Not until the gift functions, or does not. The elder measured her next words. How will I know? The "I cannot say" felt somewhat sad, and dark eyes half closed. I have hardly tested this with others. It is fully safe, Tia. Magic used only to arrange the conditions, nothing more. But as for the results, only you can determine that. Within, please. The elder carefully trotted around the rim. It took new palace employees some time before they were comfortable with hooves moving across marble. Tile was worse. Found the ramp and slowly made her way down into darkness. Darkness mostly like wet fur and feathers. Wet wings weren't good. Put it away. It was still strange, after so much time. How getting wet never really worked unless the whole body was in on it. A single dry square hoof width, and every other portion could feel like misery. Maintain the temperature, Luna instructed as water lapped over Celestia's spine, rippled the fur. But now, allow yourself to feel it. The next word echoed oddly within Tile, bounced off darkness in what probably wasn't going to wind up as lily pads. Sorry? She looked across to Luna. Submerged like this, with her sister lying down, it was a cross. You register the presence of heat as well as I do cold, the younger dryly said. To wit, deliberately. Allow yourself to notice warmth, Tia. I feel this is necessary. It took a small effort, shutting a portion of her own magic down. Why? More specific, please, was now the driest thing in the room. This is body temperature. That's almost tepid. And you are surrounded by it, Luna cut in. Move. Remain still as it suits you. Wait. For lack of anything better to do, Celestia began to pace, something which was slightly harder. Even with Earth Pony strength at work, the water still created resistance. 1 lap. 2. The owners keep this? Yes. Paused. Although not at the current depth, the floor can be raised. I needed to accommodate your form. Celestia patiently waited for a size joke. Kept waiting. 3 laps. 4. The water was there. It was very much there. From the neck down, she was saturated with it. It was there, and yet... This is... Luna's ears went straight up. Yes? The resistance is... fading, Celestia softly said. It's like I'm sliding through more than pushing. Like it's just denser air, and the heat is... Go on, the younger carefully encouraged. Speak, sister, whatever words appear within your mind. It's nowhere, the elder told her, and it's everywhere, the same temperature as my body. The same, Luna quietly added, as the womb. It's like the borders are fuzzing out between my fur and the pool. Luna slowly nodded. And my skin is tingling. Is that the minerals? If you believe it is. More pacing, only with a slightly increased bend at all 4 knees. The surface rippled as the white back sunk lower. It isn't even trotting anymore. It's drifting. The next part, then, Luna decided, her horn briefly ignited. The pool began to bubble. Jets of bubbles were entering the water. Some came in from well-concealed nozzles on the sides, while others erupted from between the tiles on the floor. The liquid roiled, the darkness glowed across what was now shifting tides. No waves, only the churning of what was almost becoming white water, but merely at the very peaks of the shifting surface, added to brighter light around the bubbles themselves, picking up the radiance from the rim. It should have been startling to have had the pool turn into a pocket of rapids without true current or rocks to break up the rush. It was not. How? Celestia softly asked, watching the specks of white glow speed by, with others breaking up against the large body. How did you arrange? The technique exists, sister, was almost a whisper. You know of it, I am sure. Pegasus magic. Compress the volume of air. It was simply stored, and now it is being released. I tried to make the placement somewhat random, almost self-defeating to do so with purpose, but it seemed important. It's like the air jets from the floor are nearly solid, the moving mare whispered. And now the surface was truly churning, with darkness and light and perpetual movement. If I stepped on them, they might support me. Silence from the younger, something forever rare. The white body shifted. The mare giggled. Light played off the tile, light and the lack thereof, dancing together. It didn't, she softly declared, but they tried. And my body is still tingling. Everywhere the water is, the bubbles are hitting me, except they aren't. It's more like a mobile caress, and the whisper was saturated with wonder. Luna, what is this? What are you doing? Nothing, was just barely audible. I watch, Tia. That is nearly all. Watch and offer one more instruction. Take a breath, hold it, and lower your head, eyes as close to the surface as possible. The pool churned. Air pushed through water, met what was now a stilling body, and light scattered. Lower the last decibels she had to give, which means holding your breath, Luna semi-repeated. It was the last thought I had, the only process I could conceive to even try. Please. The white rib cage swelled, knees and neck bent, her head went down. And the air jets stopped. The last bubbles rose and rushed past purple eyes. Darkness, immersed in shadow, surrounded, and the darkness has weight, but just enough to tell you it's there. Your own weight, your own heat buoyed, comforted. Everything moved around me, everything all the time. An instant, only an instant, can only stay like this for a moment, and the rushing little lights go by, with flowing umbra surrounding them and the tiny white glints, the light which tells the darkness what it is, because you need both. They define each other. The flow moves, calms, continues on. Don't let it fade. I have to come up. And the light moving past and through me, the last creations of a different chaos. Those are stars. She stumbled out of the pool, almost reeled, and perhaps some tiny part of what was due to the mineral content. The rest was something else, and it sent Luna back into a standing position within a second, something which only held until hooves frantically pushed towards the elder, ready to prop the larger form up. It put the younger in a convenient position, and her patience had to be credited, as well as her willingness to suffer a little discomfort. Being nuzzled by wet fur wasn't exactly fun, and given their respective positions, there was a lot of dripping. They nuzzled. At one point, Celestia found herself giggling. She also seemed to be crying, and the two states felt very much like the same thing. The siblings nuzzled in the shadows, something which, if for but a moment, had welcomed them both. They were very different mares. They always would be, and there was no true means to escape from one's own perspective. Not forever. To do so permanently would be to lose the self. But for an instant, a moment, and whenever she came back to the intangible memory of gift and lesson, the elder was that much closer to understanding the younger. Truly,